Underwater ship cemeteries are nothing new. In fact, many exist all around the world. They contain everything from lost wooden sailing ships to modern luxury cruise liners. But one underwater graveyard is unlike any other. That's because it contains the ghosts of pirates. Welcome to vanished ports of the Bayou, where ships dock in the afterlife. In between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, on the Mississippi River in Louisiana, is an underwater port. It's almost exactly halfway between the two cities at a place called Paynes. And it's here that we find the entrance to the vanished ports of the Bayou. There are actually several such entrances along this stretch of river. All of them lead down into the murky depths of the Mississippi. And it's what lies beneath these waters that makes this place so terrifying. What you may not know is that this area used to be dry land. In fact, it was home to a thriving community of people who made their living shipping goods up and down the Mississippi. But then Hurricane Katrina happened, and the storm surge from the Gulf of Mexico flooded this entire region. Today, it's known locally as Graveyard Point, and it contains the watery graves of more than 400 vessels. Among them, at least 60 are confirmed to have been pirate ships. But how do we know that? Well, back in 2010, a group of researchers decided to investigate the area. They wanted to see if there were any historic vessels still resting on the bottom of the Mississippi. What they didn't expect to find was anything still intact after being submerged for 40 years. But when they began diving, they realized that certain parts of certain wrecks had managed to survive all this time. It meant that some of the ships may even still be carrying their cargo. And that brings us to the next question. What kind of cargo did these pirate ships carry? In the golden age of piracy, which lasted from the 16th to the 18th centuries, there were thousands of ships hijacked by pirates. The most common type of vessel to be attacked was those carrying silver and gold. These ships would often travel from South America back to Europe, and they'd be laden with enough riches to make any pirate captain wealthy. But sometimes the riches were hidden. Sometimes the ships would also transport slaves. While considered commonplace back then, this was definitely not something the crew wanted to get their hands dirty with. As such, it's believed that when slave ships sank, the crew would often abandon them. They preferred to die by the sword rather than spend eternity as chattel. And that's why the Bayou port has become a resting place for so many ghost pirates. Many of the wrecks have been identified thanks to inscriptions found on their remains. The words tell the stories of those who perished aboard the vessels. Some of the ships bear sad tales of woe, while others speak of riches beyond imagination. Some of the things divers have recovered include old shoes and clothing, tools, pieces of eight, and even human bones. Because these objects have been sitting in water for so long, they're now covered in marine growth. It's eerie to think that these items once belonged to real people who lived and died during the height of the pirate age. It's not just ghostly pirate ships that can be found in the bayous either. Many of the wrecks are civilian vessels that were simply caught in the path of passing buccaneers. And it wasn't always the pirates' fault either. You see, back in the day, navigation on the Mississippi wasn't exactly precise. It was easy to get lost and run aground. Just ask the crew of the Bertie Mitchell, a steamer that sank near Paynes in 1874. At the time, steamboats were an essential part of life in the United States. In fact, it was the only way to move large amounts of freight and people through the country. The Bertie Mitchell was transporting cotton when it ran into trouble. It struck a sandbar and ultimately split in half. Luckily, everyone on board was able to escape with their lives. But the same can't be said for many of the ships resting in the bayou. There's the Mary Elizabeth, which sank in 1831 after colliding with another steamboat. Then there's the Governor, Oscar J. Moore, which capsized in 1912 after running into a snag. And let's not forget the Creole, which caught fire in 1914 and burned to the waterline in just 2 hours. Of course, there are also the ships that weren't destroyed but were instead captured by pirates. One such vessel was the San Jose, a galleon that was traveling from Spain to the port of Cartagena. When it was ambushed in 1708, it was filled to the brim with gold, silver, and emeralds, which the crew quickly handed over to the pirates. But then they got greedy and tried to fight back. A battle ensued, and the galleon was eventually boarded. The Spanish crew and passengers were put to death, but the pirates couldn't loot their ship because it had sunk. It took 4 days for the treasure to be salvaged, and not all of it was ever recovered. Some believe that much of the loot is still hidden at the bottom of the ocean, just waiting to be discovered. Could this be the origin of the treasures held by the pirates of the Bayou? Maybe. The truth is, no one really knows how many pirate ships sank off the coast of the United States. Records from the time period are incomplete, and many ships simply disappeared without a trace. It's estimated that tens of thousands of vessels met their demise at the hands of pirates, and yet only a small fraction of them have been accounted for. This means that the number of ghost ships lying in wait at the bottom of the sea could be staggering. One of the most infamous pirate captains who operated in these waters was Jean Lafitte. He was a notorious privateer and smuggler who plundered Spanish and French ships. According to legend, he hid his loot on an island in Barataria Bay, and some say his treasure is still there today. While there's no evidence to support this claim, it hasn't stopped treasure hunters from searching. In fact, one man named Sam went so far as to hire a helicopter and use its loud noise to flush out any buried treasure. But he came up empty. So if the treasure isn't on the island, then where is it? Well, it may have ended up in the bayou. You see, when Jean Lafitte died in 1826, he left behind a fortune. There's no doubt about it, but he didn't leave it to his family. Instead, he willed that his estate should be divided equally among the men who had sailed with him for at least 1 year. Each man was to receive a share of the booty, no matter how much or how little it amounted to. So while some pirates may have gotten rich, others got next to nothing. If you want to visit the vanished ports of the bayou for yourself, then you'll need to bring your scuba gear. Unfortunately, it's impossible to visit without proper certification. That's because the sites are located in an area known as the Main Pass, which is notorious for its strong currents and poor visibility. Even experienced divers have been known to get lost in these waters. And that's not even mentioning the dangerous cargo that may be hiding beneath the surface. Imagine accidentally knocking over a chest full of cursed Aztec gold or angering a skeleton by stepping on its bones. It could happen. Now check out The Real Curse of the Black Pearl, or watch The Haunting of the Mary Celeste for another terrifying tale of the sea.